Welcome back to the Category Mistake. I am your host, Richard Mariello, and the last couple of weeks we have talked about lots of crazy things going on in the world. Everything from a presidential debate where we didn't understand if one of the presidents even knew where he was, to a president candidate being shot, and now the person he was running against has dropped out of the race and his vice president is running instead. I'm not going to talk about any of that. I think we've all been presidential race outed already. It's scary to think that it's July, the election is November, and some people are just exhausted from dealing with all this craziness that we call the 2024 presidential election. The president doesn't have a lot of power, but right now we are giving the office of the president a lot of power. It's the House, it's the Senate, but anyway, I won't go into a government and economics class. I started it back up a couple weeks ago after a long layover, asking about what makes you happy. What makes me happy? What makes you happy? What do we do for ourselves that really makes us enjoy the life and make us wake up every morning to enjoy life? And I've been struggling with that, as I've said before. And what I've realized even this week more and more is without doing things that make me happy, it's getting harder and harder for me to be motivated to live my everyday life in a way that benefits me. For example, because right now mentally I am not taking care of myself, I admit it, I know there's a problem with that. I am unmotivated to do anything as in work or extracurricular or things that are fun. I really just sit on my phone, play a video game, or just stare at the ceiling. I did go out to a Renaissance fair with my wife this weekend for a couple of reasons. One, my son's getting married and his wedding is a Renaissance theme. Two, I buried my mother's ashes in the fairgrounds that the Renaissance fair was taking place. If you grow up in Maine, there's an Acton Fairgrounds, which is like a big 4-H festival every year. And as kids, and even my kids, my mom would take us and then take my kids and her grandkids to the Acton Fair. And we would live there basically for a good solid week. We'd sleep there, we'd eat there, we'd just be there. And my mother loved the fairs. That was her thing. Camping in the fairs. If she could just camp and go deal with sheep and pigs all day, she'd be so happy. I hated them. I hated it because I didn't have a choice. I just kind of had to go. And after she passed away, I went to a fair or two with my wife, and I tried to enjoy it as if it wasn't torture for me. I didn't enjoy them, but I also didn't hate them. So I went to Renaissance Fair. It was in the Acton Fairgrounds, which, again, normally there's fairs going on, but this time it was a Renaissance Fair, which is a little different. And I try to spend the day just kind of enjoying myself and looking around and looking at what's going on. And though I didn't hate it, it didn't bring me a lot of, happiness, joy. I'm so glad I went. There's not a lot of things right now that do. And I was thinking to myself, is that normal for everybody? When I deployed, nothing was fun. I worked every day. I watched videos at night or talked to my wife. There wasn't a lot of fun. It was anticipation to talk to my wife or anticipation to sleep. But there was no, I can't wait to go do this. And even though it was a long time ago, what I've realized is I really haven't done a lot of things since. I used to get really ramped up to go to a movie or go to the driving range. But even then and now, it just isn't the same. Like there's a movie coming out this week, and back 10 years ago, the tickets were already been bought. I'd plan my whole week around it. It would be good to go. And it's not. I probably will see the movie. I don't know when I'm going to see it. And it's not because, I hate the movie. It's not because, my wife won't let me. It's the fact of I'm not mentally okay to just to go. I'm not going to just go see a movie. And that's something that's always brought me joy in the past. Again, the last couple of years, that's gone away. Taking my dogs for a ride or a drive or to the park or do other things with them used to be fun for me. Not as much fun anymore. I don't know why. They still have fun. I just don't. Going to work, teaching, even security where I work now. It has been fun in the past, or at least it's gotten my juices flowing. There's been anticipation. There's been excitement. Not anymore. So I'm really trying to figure out what other people do when they get into this funk. And some people say, talk to your therapist. Maybe it's meds. Maybe you need to sleep. Maybe the joy that you had, you need to find a new joy. I've talked to my therapist. I take meds. I sleep the best I can. I don't know what else to do. Over the last 2-3 months, I've had so much going on mentally. I'm running out of ideas for things to help with all this. It doesn't help me that I don't do well talking about it to the people that actually care about me. I'm thinking about leaving work for a little while and taking some time off to get myself mentally better. But how do I talk to my loved ones about that and not feel like I'm letting them down? How do I talk to people saying, hey, I am so stressed. I am so depressed. I need to go away or at least do a program for 6-8 weeks, to help me combat whatever is going on in my brain. I don't know about you, but I don't know how to do that. I've never known well how to talk about my mental health. I can talk about other people's mental health, but not my own. And the struggle I have also is with what my wife does for work. I feel like I will be judged differently, and I don't know if she will. No idea. It's that, that thought process of worst case scenario. My wife is a therapist. That's what she does. So talking to her about my mental health sometimes is a struggle. It's a struggle because I don't show her my full mental self a lot, and maybe I should. And she's not my therapist. She's my wife. And sometimes I feel like I can't be mentally transparent with her on that stuff. Again, I'm probably wrong. I probably am not, doing this the right way. But for the first time in a long time, I'm really worried about my mental health and about my physical health and connected to my mental health. About 1.5 years ago, I did a lot of dumb things. I've talked about it a little bit. And I got really, really depressed, a lot of anxiety. And that was different than this. That was an acute or it was a deal with this right now type of problem. But the underlying problem that caused that's caused a lot of this, I've never fully addressed. And I've never fully addressed it for many reasons. One of which is when I got home, I was depressed. I had the honeymoon period, but I couldn't afford to not work. So I went right back to work. Work was too much, too stressful, not something I needed to do. And for a little while, I just worked at jobs and I just pushed through. Then I got a job and I liked it. I went to school I liked it. I did well in school for a while, but then the depression kicked in, and I would have periods of time in school where I struggled just because mentally I could not be the student I needed to be. Then I got a teaching job, and I can control it for that period of time. But when I left the teaching job, I went back to school, and I couldn't do it. It was just too difficult mentally for me. As soon as I left teaching and went back to school the second time, I couldn't control the depression, so I lost my mojo for school. Went back to start teaching again. And when I started teaching again, that's the same time my mother passed away. And instead of taking time off and taking care of all the mental stress I was going under for my mother passing away, I took a day. And because I didn't do that, I got myself into a lot of trouble teaching at that school because I said a lot of dumb things because I was depressed. I was depressed because the underlying problem that started in 2011, I never dealt with. I never dealt with it. And though I do therapy and I'm seeing a psychiatrist for medication, not drugs, same thing, I guess, but different. I'm still not able to do the full package. Like I haven't cleared the area of my mind that I need to clear. And I don't know how long that will take to do, and I don't know how to address it with my loved ones. I can talk to my counselor all day, every day. I can talk to my psychiatrist all day, every day. And maybe that will help. My psychiatrist recommended an 8-week day program for stress and anxiety that I could be part of. And it's, a couple hours a day for 8 weeks, every day, pretty much. And I think, though I hate to say it out loud, I think that's actually might be a good idea. But how do I tell my loved ones that, hey, I can't really do anything else. I can't work. I don't know how I'm going to work and do this at the same time. Now, I can take time off from work and get paid to a point. I think it's like 80% of my paycheck. That's great. And that's what I'm looking into actually tomorrow. But I also feel like if I'm not working, they're going to judge me for being lazy. And maybe they probably won't. Again, it's the, everyone has those mind thoughts where the worst case scenario is always the only thing that shows up. And that's a struggle for me. I fight that battle every day. Every day I wake up not trying to find the joy in the day, but it's trying to make sure I don't do something stupid that make the people in my life upset with me. I live on the defense most of every day of my life. When I go to church, I'm on the defensive. When I'm at work, I'm on the defensive. When I'm at home, I'm on the defensive. I'm always trying to put out fires that don't even exist yet. And that's why I think a mental reset might be a good idea. Anyone have thoughts on that? Let me know. If anyone's ever done it, let me know. I don't even know what's involved. They basically just told me it would be, 5 days a week. It would be on the computer unless I wanted to go in person. And I just, there's a lot of talking, a lot of like that sort of stuff. And maybe it's good. I mean, it can't be that bad, right? If other people do it and it works. Again, my biggest challenge is communicating this with my loved ones. I'm not Superman. I've never said I was Superman. I've never tried to be Superman. But I've always had an issue showing that I'm weak or that I have problems to my kids and to my wife. They all know I do. I've never hidden the fact that I do. It's just every time I admit it, every time I show it, every time I have to deal with it, it hurts mentally. It drains me. It drains me to say, I don't know if I can do this. I've always just been able to do it. been able to push through, been able to do. And I think right now I'm not able to do. I'm not able to succeed at a high enough level to where my life is thriving and the people around me are getting the best of me. Now, I have medical stuff going on. I have an issue with my thyroid. I have an issue with my lymph nodes. I have an issue with my vocal cords. If you can tell, my voice is amazing. I have an issue with my adrenal glands. None of that has to do with what's going on in my brain. My brain issue has been a very long time, and now, with all this stuff going on with my day, and I just paused it. My future daughter-in-law came in and totally lost my train of thought. I'll finish the only thought I have in my brain right now is I've always been the strong one. I've always been the dad. I'm really good at being dad. I work with people who treat me like I'm a dad. My students have always looked at me as a fatherly person. People at church, a lot of them look at me as a fatherly person. I've got a lot of kids. I've got a lot of people in my life who look to me for answers. And right now, I don't trust myself with those answers. Right now, I don't trust myself with doing what's best for them or for me with the things that I'm doing. And that's a little scary for me. It's a little scary because, like all of you probably out there, you like to be confident in what you're doing every day. You like to be confident in how you're dealing with a situation. Some mornings when I drive my grandson to school, after I drop him off, I don't know if I should go to work or should just park in a parking lot and, listen to the radio or play on my phone and just pretend I don't exist for the day. I go to work or I come home and do what I need to do. I don't do that. But sometimes I just want my brain to have a timeout. I haven't figured out how to do that yet. Now, my psychiatrist the other day, they're like, well, have you ever tried meditating? And I guess I have. I'm not good at it. I don't know if you can be good or bad at it. I'm not really sure. But what I realized is more than 90 seconds, my brain gets sketched out. It's almost like I can't handle the quietness. The quietness drives me crazy. And I've always filled the quietness with busy, which has always worked. But now I think, like the world has told us, sometimes your brain can only handle so much, and then it gives, basically telling you to stop. And I'm at that stop level, I think. I'm at the level of you can't continue to live like this because you're not meant to do this stuff like this, and you need to stop being a moron. And this is not just, this happened in 2011, and if I just do this, and this will be better. I've always been somewhat like this. It's just gotten worse. When I deployed in 2011, I had a real hard time with sleeping. Mostly because, it was a war zone, and there was noise everywhere, and there was things going on, and people always were in need of something. And I loved being needed. I'm not going to say I hated people needing me. Loved it. Every part of it, I loved. I loved it because I felt like I could help people. Okay? The problem now is people aren't asking for my help like that, yet I still try to help them. And I also have made some people so dependent on my quote-unquote help that I don't know if they know how to deal with things on their own because I've always just fixed it for them. And that's not the right way of doing things. You need, there's a whole thing, teach a man to Give the man a fish, you feed him for a day, you teach him to fish, you feed, forever type deal. I'm fishing for everybody, and I'm not teaching them how to fish. And that's probably, again, not the right way of doing things. So that's my conundrum. That's my stress and anxiety. That's what's going on in my mind. And then with all the news going on, Joe Biden has pulled out of the presidential race. And as a history teacher who's not teaching right now, it's kind of weird, but I want to talk to people about it and teach people about how rare this is to happen. Last time it happened was kind of Lyndon Johnson, but he did it in way earlier than this. He did it before the primaries. Just how odd this is. But there's no one to teach. I don't try teaching people that I work with right now that much. One, because I don't think they want to hear it. I've realized over time that what I think is cool and what most everybody else think is cool for history is not the same thing. But that's a big thing. It's seeing historical events happen and not knowing how to talk to people about them without sounding like a teacher. And you could say, well, it's good to be a teacher. It is. But when you're a 21-year-old kid who just got out of school, you don't want to hear from a guy to teach you. You want to do your job and be left alone. You don't want to deal with all the stupid in the world. And I'm really good at teaching the stupid of the world because I enjoy it. No one else really does. There's a few people like me, but I don't work with people like me. I work with a lot of people who aren't like me. And to teach them out of spite, I also don't want to do that because I don't want them to hate the world that we live in. And that's, again, kind of part of the deal. When I was teaching, I had a, quote unquote captive audience. These kids weren't going anywhere. They were my students. They were in my classroom. I was, quote unquote, in charge. So I was able to focus my teaching on how I saw things and how things were happening. I've said in the past, I taught on January 6th and on January 7th. I've taught students about the crazy things in this world. I've taught them about Afghanistan and 9/11, things that I've experienced, because even though books are great, books are great. Having somebody who's lived through a lot of it is better. I was taking a college class once, and the class I did was on Afghanistan. And this teacher, I did this whole presentation, and she got really upset with me. And she said what I was teaching wasn't right. She said the book that she wanted us to read doesn't say any of that. And I said, well, the book is wrong. And she asked me what made me think that the book was wrong. And I told her, I said, well, listen, I was there. So the book is wrong. And it first offended her that I would call her teaching wrong. But what I was trying to explain to her is the author of that book probably went to Afghanistan in the 70s. The last time, reporters were allowed in Afghanistan to write a book. But he wasn't there during the time I was talking about, which was 2010 to 2012. For a book to tell a story, it needs to be relevant to the time period that it's talking about. It was talking about the 1970s Afghanistan before Russia invaded and before it went extreme. Because Afghanistan before all this was kind of a thriving, area where there was education, there was a lot of good. Of course, that changed. But I was talking about the new Afghanistan. She wanted me to teach more on the old Afghanistan, and that's not what I wanted. And when I teach, I explain to my students a lot of times that the books we have in the classroom are great, but you can't just rely on a book to tell you things. There are people in this world that have lived through history. So I've had them interview people who fought in World War II, fought in Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Afghanistan, Iraq. And I've done that so they can learn from it and learn from people who are there. Because that's what you want to do, right? You don't want to learn from... It's much better to learn from someone who actually was at D-Day than watching a movie or reading a book about D-Day. And that's what I've always done for teaching, is I've always been more about the reality of what we're learning, not just the facts. It's not just about, on this date, at this time, at this location. There's people that this happened to. This wasn't like... D-Day didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in reality. It was a real thing where real men, and mostly real men, but some women, were involved, where people were dying every second. It wasn't like, there's been a few injured. There was thousands. And they all did it. They didn't run away. They didn't say, I reject this war. They signed up and they did what they needed to do. They did it because it was the right thing to do. And this goes back to the beginning of this. I've been taking on other people's quote-unquote problems and pushing mine down because I've always felt that was the right thing to do. I've always felt that to take care of myself would be selfish. Hence the word selfish. My problems aren't as bad as everybody else's. What's happening now is I'm seeing my problems as more of a problem than some other people. And I'm hoping, for my sake, that I can continue on this path of trying to make myself better, to where this feeling I have of, selfishness and all this stuff here will go away once I get the help that I probably should have gotten a while ago. And I think that will take time. I think my best option is to get help and then get on the right mental track where when I go back to teaching or whenever I go back to whatever I'm going to do, I am able to fully envelop myself into that without the nagging exhaustion and mental fatigue that goes along with it. Because I love teaching, but mentally at the end, it was a lot. It was too much. And covering it up, I did that great. I was great at covering it up, great at dealing with my stress by not dealing with my stress. Absolutely, positively, I was great at that. But that is not the way you should deal with it. Dealing with stress by not dealing with it is probably the dumbest thing you can do. And I'm not saying, everyone's dumb, whoever represses their stress and anger. No, what I'm saying is I'm dumb for repressing my stress and anger. I'm dumb for thinking the best way to deal with all this depression I have is to say I don't have depression. So Thursday I have a phone call. And that phone call will be so my appointment on Thursday is to basically go over if I was going to do this or not and how to deal with it. So wish me luck. So that's it for this week. Kind of a different topic, different idea, real life stuff. I still went off on the raging tangent about teaching and the presidency, even though that wasn't my original plan. But with me, Original plans don't always work anyway. So I'm hoping you all have a great week. If you're going through something and you need to talk, there's always someone out there. If you don't know someone, reach out to me. I don't care. I'll talk. I'm crazy too. Sometimes the hardest is saying the first words, reaching out and saying, "Hey, I'm struggling," because just I am too, and that's something I'm working on myself. So I do understand the struggle with just speaking what's going on in your brain. Have a good week, everyone. And let's hope for next week, nothing crazy for at least a week. Because it seems like all we've had is crazy for the last month and a half. Have a good week. God bless.